The vast darkness of space stretched endlessly in all directions, broken only by the cold light of distant stars. Through this void, a massive fleet of crystalline ships moved like predators hunting prey. The Velthian Empire had ruled this part of the galaxy for over 3,000 years, and their ships reflected that ancient power. Each vessel gleamed like carved diamond, their surfaces sharp and threatening. Fleet Commander Nexithar stood on the bridge of his flagship, his forearms crossed behind his back. His pale blue skin seemed to glow in the dim light, and his large black eyes reflected the tactical displays that surrounded him. The Velthians were tall, thin creatures who had evolved on a world of crystal caves and perpetual twilight. They had long ago decided that they were superior to all other life forms in the galaxy. "Commander," his aide reported, bowing low, "our scouts have returned from the Outer Rim. They have found another inhabited world." Nexthar barely looked up from his reports. In his long career, he had overseen the conquest of dozens of worlds. Some resisted, some surrendered immediately. All eventually fell. "Show me," he said with disinterest. The main display flickered to life, showing a blue and green world spinning slowly in the void. White clouds swirled across its surface, and Nexthar could see the brown and green patches that indicated land masses. It looked remarkably similar to dozens of other worlds he had conquered. "The inhabitants call it Earth," the aide continued. "They appear to be a young species, carbon-based. They have only recently developed spaceflight, and their longest trips barely reach their own moon. Their weapons are primitive chemical and nuclear devices." Nexthar yawned, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Population? Approximately 8 billion, concentrated in large cities across 7 continents. Any significant defenses?" "None that would trouble our fleet, Commander. Their space presence is minimal. A few small stations, some primitive satellites. Their military appears to be divided into separate national groups that often fight among themselves." This was what Nexthar expected to hear. The pattern was always the same with these young species. They fought each other instead of preparing for the real threats that lurked in the darkness between stars. They built their cities in obvious locations and concentrated their populations where they were most vulnerable. "Very well," Nexthar said, already losing interest. "Begin standard pacification protocols. I want this finished quickly. The High Council expects our sector to be fully secured within the year." His aide hesitated. "Commander, should we attempt communication first? Sometimes the younger species will surrender if we simply demonstrate our power." Nexthar's laugh was like the sound of breaking glass. "Why waste time? Look at them. They cannot even unite their own world. They will break after the first bombardment just like all the others." The Velthian fleet began its approach to Earth. Their ships moved in perfect formation, each one the size of a human city. The crystalline hulls reflected no light, making them nearly invisible against the starfield. They had perfected this approach over centuries of conquest. On Earth, Dr. Park Minho was working late in his laboratory in Seoul. He specialized in quantum communications, though his real work was known to very few people. As he adjusted the settings on his experimental equipment, a series of alarms began to sound throughout the building. "Sir," his assistant burst into the room. "The orbital monitoring stations are detecting massive objects approaching from the outer system." Park Minho felt his blood turn cold. He had spent the last 15 years of his life preparing for this moment, hoping it would never come. With steady hands, he activated a hidden panel on his desk and pressed a series of buttons that would change everything. High above Earth, the Velthian fleet took position around the planet. Commander Nexthar studied the surface through his ship's sensors, selecting targets with practiced efficiency. Major population centers first, then military installations, then infrastructure. It was a formula that had worked on 47 worlds. "Begin bombardment," he ordered. The first beams of energy struck Seoul just as the sun was rising. The ancient city, home to millions of humans, erupted in flames as alien weapons tore through buildings and streets. Similar attacks hit Tokyo, New York, London, and a dozen other major cities simultaneously. But something was wrong. Instead of panic and immediate surrender, Nexthar began receiving reports that confused him. Human military forces were emerging from hidden bunkers. Aircraft of unknown design were engaging his fighters. Ground-based weapons that should not exist on such a primitive world were firing at his ships. "Increase bombardment intensity," he commanded, his confidence beginning to waver. "Target civilian areas. Break their will to fight." It was the worst decision the Valthians would ever make. Across the burning cities of Earth, quantum transmitters activated simultaneously. The signals raced out into space faster than light, carrying a simple message to human colonies that the Valthians did not even know existed. The message was brief. "The wolves have come to our door." In hidden bases throughout human space, alarms began to sound. The war had finally begun. Captain Lee Daehyun was loading cargo containers onto his merchant ship when the communicator on his wrist began to vibrate. The small device looked ordinary, like the kind traders used for business calls. But this vibration pattern was different. 3 short pulses followed by 2 long ones, then 3 short again. His hands froze on the container he was lifting. The message that appeared on the tiny screen made his heart race. "Earth under attack. Protocol 7 active. All units respond immediately." Lee dropped the container and ran toward his ship's communication room. Around him on Proxima Station, he could see other humans receiving similar messages. A woman at the fuel depot suddenly stopped what she was doing and began speaking urgently into her comm device. 2 men loading supplies onto a nearby ship exchanged quick glances and nodded to each other. For 50 years, humans had been spreading quietly through the galaxy. The Valthians knew about Earth, but they had no idea how far humanity had really traveled. On mining asteroids, farming colonies, research stations, and trading posts scattered across dozens of star systems, humans had been living, working, and most importantly, preparing. Dr. Yang Hyeri stood in the command center deep beneath the surface of Haven Colony. The room looked like any other research facility, filled with computers and scientific equipment. But at her touch, hidden panels slid open to reveal military-grade communication arrays and tactical displays that had been waiting in darkness for decades. "All stations, this is Haven Control," she spoke into her headset. "Confirm activation status." One by one, voices responded from across human space. "Titan base online. New Geneva ready. Mining station 77 activated. Kepler outpost. Standing by." Each response represented thousands of humans who had been living double lives. Scientists who were also soldiers. Miners who were also engineers. Farmers who were also intelligence officers. The human defense network had been built, slowly, carefully, in complete secrecy. On the screen in front of Yang Hyeri, a map of local space appeared. Green dots began lighting up one by one as hidden facilities came online. There were far more green dots than anyone outside the network had ever imagined. Admiral Choi Min-soo watched the same display from his hidden command post inside Titan Base. The massive asteroid had been hollowed out over 30 years, transformed into a military fortress that could build and repair warships. To outside observers, it looked like a simple mining operation. "Phase 1 complete," he reported to the War Council. "All network assets are active and ready." The War Council existed only in quantum space, its members scattered across the galaxy but connected by technology that the Valthians did not even know was possible. General Kim Sora's image appeared on his screen, her face grim but determined. "What's our actual strength?" she asked. "Better than we hoped," Admiral Choi replied. "We have 47 hidden shipyards, over 200 armed vessels of various sizes, and approximately 50,000 trained personnel across all colonies." The numbers would have shocked the Valthians. They had been watching Earth for months, studying human technology and military capabilities. But they had only been looking at Earth. They had no idea that humans had been building a secret army among the stars. Intelligence Officer Kang Soman worked frantically at her station, intercepting and decoding Valthian communications. Her team had been studying alien languages and technology for decades, preparing for this exact moment. "Sir," she called to Admiral Choi, "I'm reading their fleet communications. They're calling this a routine operation. They've only committed 3% of their sector fleet to the attack on Earth. Admiral Choi smiled for the first time since the crisis began. They think they're fighting farmers and shopkeepers. They have no idea what's coming. On dozens of worlds, humans began moving with purpose that surprised their alien neighbors. Dr. Park Ji-won, who had spent 15 years working as a civilian researcher on the neutral trading world of Kepler 442b, suddenly revealed equipment that should not have existed. Her small laboratory transformed into a military command post as hidden weapons and communication devices emerged from concealed compartments. The Valthians on Kepler 442b watched in confusion as humans throughout their sector began acting strangely. Some disappeared entirely. Others suddenly had access to technology that seemed far too advanced for their supposed level of development. Back on Earth, the bombardment continued. But something was wrong with the Velthian plan. Instead of surrendering, human resistance was growing stronger. Military units that should have been destroyed were still fighting. Weapons that should not have existed were striking back at the alien ships. Commander Nexthar received increasingly disturbing reports. "Sir, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from multiple locations. It appears the humans have been hiding advanced facilities." "Impossible," Nexthar said, but doubt was creeping into his voice. "Our intelligence reports were thorough." What he did not understand was that human intelligence had been even more thorough. For 50 years, humans had been studying every alien species they encountered. They had learned from the mistakes of conquered worlds. They had prepared for every possible scenario. The awakening was complete. Across human space, the network was fully active. Ships that had been disguised as cargo, haulers revealed hidden weapons. Mining stations activated defense systems. Research facilities began producing military equipment at an impossible rate. The Velthians had made their first critical mistake by underestimating humanity. Their second mistake would prove even more costly. They were about to learn that humans had never stopped being warriors. The real war was about to begin. The attack came without warning. Velthian Command Station Helix had orbited the gas giant Xerion for over 2 centuries, a massive crystalline fortress that controlled all military operations in the sector. Its commanders had never imagined that enemy ships could approach undetected. "Captain," Park Ji-won pressed herself against the cold metal wall of the alien corridor, listening to the confused voices of Velthian soldiers echoing through the station. Her strike team had materialized from stealth ships that the aliens could not see, could not track, and could not understand. "Team Alpha, report," she whispered into her throat microphone. "Reactor level secured," came the reply from Sergeant Kim Tae-hyun. "These aliens really didn't expect visitors." "Team Beta in position at the command center," reported Lieutenant Oh Min-jong, "ready to begin data extraction." Park Ji-won smiled grimly. The Velthians had superior technology, but they had grown lazy after thousands of years of easy victories. They relied too heavily on their advanced sensors and powerful weapons. They had forgotten that wars were won by soldiers, not by machines. "Remember our mission," she said to her teams. "We're not here to match their technology. We're here to prove that smart tactics beat fancy weapons every time." The human assault teams moved through the station like ghosts. They had studied Velthian architecture for decades, learning the layout of their ships and stations from captured data and careful observation. Every corridor, every security checkpoint, every weakness had been mapped and memorized. At the same moment, similar attacks were happening across Velthian space. Supply convoys disappeared between star systems. Communication arrays went silent without explanation. Military bases reported strange malfunctions in their defense systems, followed by complete loss of contact. Dr. Shin Woo-jin worked through the night in his secret laboratory beneath Luna Base. For 30 years, he had been studying alien biology under the cover of legitimate research. The specimens he examined now had been captured during the first wave of attacks, and what he discovered made him both excited and disturbed. "Admiral," he reported via encrypted channel, "I've found something important. The Velthians have a weakness in their nervous system. I can create a targeted virus that will disrupt their brain functions without affecting any other known species." Admiral Choi Min-soo studied the data from his command center on Titan Base. "How do we deploy it?" "We need to get it into their atmosphere on their homeworld," Dr. Shin replied. "But that means getting a ship through their entire defensive network." "Leave that to us," said a new voice on the channel. Lieutenant Commander Bae Yuna had been listening from her modified corvette, already preparing for launch. "My ship can get through." Her vessel looked like a broken-down cargo hauler, the kind that drifted between star systems carrying spare parts and cheap goods. But hidden beneath its rusty exterior were some of the most advanced stealth systems humans had ever built. The ship could become nearly invisible to most sensors, and its modified engines could outrun anything the Velthians could send after it. "This is a one-way mission," Admiral Choi warned her. "Once you deploy the virus, you won't be able to escape their core systems." "I understand, sir," Bae Yuna replied calmly. "My family died in the Seoul bombardment. This is personal." While human strike teams continued their raids, intelligence officers worked to understand their enemy better. Captain Nam Seok-jin had spent 15 years as a diplomatic translator, moving freely through alien space and learning their languages. Now he used that knowledge to intercept and decode Velthian military communications. "Sir," he reported to the War Council, "their high command is starting to panic. They're receiving reports of human attacks from systems they thought were completely secure. They're demanding to know how we're getting past their defenses." The answer was simpler than the Velthians could imagine. Humans had been watching and learning for decades. Every alien ship that visited Earth, every trading vessel that stopped at human colonies, every diplomatic meeting had been an opportunity to gather intelligence. Major Song Hyun-woo led his infiltration team through the corridors of a Velthian supply depot on the edge of their territory. His soldiers moved silently, using equipment that combined human engineering with captured alien technology. They had learned to turn the enemy's own tools against them. "Charges set," he whispered to his team. 30 seconds to extraction." The explosion that followed destroyed 3 months' worth of military supplies intended for the war against Earth. It was one of dozens of similar attacks happening simultaneously across Velthian space. Back on Command Station Helix, Captain Park Ji-won's mission was nearly complete. Her teams had captured vital intelligence about Velthian fleet movements, command structures, and defensive capabilities. More importantly, they had proven something that would terrify the aliens once they understood it. "Data download complete," reported Lieutenant Oh Min-jung. "We have everything. All teams prepare for extraction," Park Ji-won ordered. Just as silently as they had arrived, the human assault teams disappeared back to their stealth ships. When Velthian reinforcements finally reached Command Station Helix, they found chaos. Critical systems were damaged, sensitive files had been copied, and security footage showed only glimpses of armored figures moving through the shadows like nightmares. The message was clear. Nowhere in Velthian space was safe anymore. The humans were coming, and they were far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Commander Nexthar received the reports with growing dread. In less than a week, the humans had gone from a species facing extinction to a force that could strike anywhere in his empire. His confidence was shattered, and for the first time in his long career, he began to feel afraid. Fleet Admiral Nexthar stared at the tactical display with growing horror. Red markers covered the holographic map of Velthian space, each one representing a lost base, destroyed convoy, or captured facility. In just 6 months, his mighty empire had been reduced to scattered remnants fighting for survival. "How many ships do we have left?" he asked his aide, though he dreaded the answer. "Approximately 40% of our original fleet strength, Admiral, but many vessels are damaged and operating with skeleton crews." Nexthar's 4 hands trembled as he gripped the command console. The humans had done the impossible. They had gone from a primitive species facing extinction to a force that was systematically destroying everything the Velthians had built over 3,000 years. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "we're receiving another surrender request from the Kepler defense grid. They say human forces have surrounded their positions and are demanding immediate capitulation. Tell them to fight." Nexthar snarled, but even as he said it, he knew it was hopeless. Every Vielthian commander who had tried to fight the humans had been outmaneuvered, outgunned, or simply disappeared without a trace. On the bridge of the human flagship Indomitable, Admiral Choi Min-soo studied reports from across the galaxy. The transformation had been remarkable. Entire star systems that had been under Velthian control for centuries were now flying human flags. Former slaves had risen up to join the human cause, providing intelligence and support that made their advance unstoppable. "Admiral," reported Captain Lee Daehyun from his station, "Colonel Jang Hyunwoo is requesting permission to begin Phase 4. Admiral Choi nodded grimly. Phase 4 was the most audacious part of their plan. While Velthian forces were scattered across the galaxy trying to defend their remaining territories, a small human fleet had been making its way to the heart of their empire. "Permission granted," he said. "Tell the Colonel to light up their homeworld." Deep in Velthian space, Colonel Jang Hyunwoo watched as his engineering teams finished constructing Phoenix Base. The massive space station had been assembled from prefabricated sections carried by cargo ships disguised as refugee vessels. Now it orbited the outer edge of the Velthian home system, a fortress bristling with weapons and communication arrays. "Base is fully operational," he reported via quantum transmitter. "We're in position to monitor all traffic to and from Velthia Prime." The psychological impact was devastating. The Vielthians had always believed their homeworld was untouchable, protected by layers of defenses and the vast distances of space. To discover that humans had built a military base in their most sacred system shattered what remained of their confidence. Dr. Yang Hyeri coordinated the final phase of the operation from her command center on Haven Colony. Dozens of screens showed human fleets converging on remaining Velthian positions with mechanical precision. This was no longer about survival or even victory. This was about sending a message that would echo through the galaxy for generations. "Target acquired," reported Commander Park Sohee from her destroyer Retribution. "Velthian heavy cruiser Dominion attempting to flee the Arcturus system." "Negative on escape," Yang Hyeri replied coldly. "All enemy vessels are to be captured or destroyed. No exceptions." The battle was brief and decisive. The Velthian cruiser, once a symbol of imperial power, was crippled by human weapons and boarded by assault teams. Its crew was taken prisoner, and its captain forced to watch as his ship was converted into a human vessel. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. The Vielthian Empire, which had seemed unstoppable just months before, was collapsing like a house of cards. Their advanced technology meant nothing against human tactics and determination. In a desperate attempt to understand their enemy, Fleet Admiral Nexthar ordered the capture of a human prisoner. When Dr. Song Mina was brought before him, he expected to find a savage warrior. Instead, he found an elderly scientist who looked at him with something approaching pity. "You speak our language," he said in surprise. "We've been studying you for 50 years, Dr. Song replied calmly. "We know how you think, how you fight, and most importantly, how you fail." "Impossible. Your species was primitive when we first detected you." Dr. Song smiled sadly. "That's what every species you conquered thought about the next one. The difference is we learned from their mistakes. Every world you destroyed taught us something new about your weaknesses." "What do you want?" Nexthar demanded. "Unconditional surrender," she said simply. "Your empire is finished. Your fleets are scattered. Your colonies are in revolt. You can end this now with dignity, or we can finish what you started when you attacked our home." Nexthar laughed bitterly. "You think you can rule the galaxy? You're just one species among thousands." "We don't want to rule anything," Dr. Song replied. "We just want to make sure that no one ever again makes the mistake of threatening humanity's home. The galaxy will remember this war, Admiral. Not as the day the Velthian Empire fell, but as the day they learned why you never attack a species that makes warfare into an art form." The final message came 3 days later. Transmitted on all frequencies heard by every species in the galaxy, it was simple and absolute. "This is Admiral Choi Min-soo of the Human Defense Fleet. The Velthian Empire has 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. After that time, we will consider all resistance to be terrorism and respond accordingly. You had the galaxy. You could have left us alone. You chose war instead. Now face the consequences. The countdown had begun. The surrender came exactly 71 hours and 37 minutes after the ultimatum. Fleet Admiral Nexthar's voice echoed across every communication channel in the galaxy, broken and defeated. This is Fleet Admiral Nexthar of the Velthian Imperial Navy. His transmission began. The proud tone of his earlier broadcasts replaced by exhausted resignation. By order of the High Council of Velthia Prime, all Imperial forces are hereby ordered to cease hostilities and surrender unconditionally to human forces. General Kim Sora stood on the observation deck of the Occupation Command ship New Dawn, looking down at the crystalline cities of Velthia Prime. The alien homeworld was beautiful in its own way, with towers that caught and reflected light like enormous gems, but she felt no satisfaction in viewing the conquered world below. "It's over," she said quietly to Admiral Choi Min-soo, who had joined her at the viewing port. "The fighting, yes," he replied. "But now comes the harder part." "What do we do with victory?" Around the galaxy, human fleets held position over former Velthian worlds. Millions of aliens looked up at the sky and wondered what their new human masters would be like. Would they be as cruel as the Velthians had been? Would they enslave entire populations or simply destroy them? The answer came 3 days later. Dr. Park Min-ho, now serving as the first director of interspecies relations, stood before a gathering of representatives from dozens of worlds. The Great Hall on Velthia Prime had once hosted ceremonies celebrating imperial conquest. Now it would witness something the galaxy had never seen before. "We are here to establish the Terran Protectorate," he announced to the assembled crowd. "This is not an empire. This is not a dictatorship. This is an alliance of free worlds united for mutual protection and cooperation." A murmur ran through the crowd. The Zephyrian delegate, whose people had been enslaved by the Valthians for 800 years, raised a tentative hand. "What are the terms of membership?" she asked. Dr. Park smiled. "Simple. No member world may attack another member world. All disputes must be resolved through negotiation or arbitration. Any act of aggression against a member species will result in immediate intervention by Protectorate forces." "And if we refuse to join?" asked the representative from Kepler-7. "Then you are free to govern yourselves as you see fit," Dr. Park replied. "But you will receive no protection if others threaten you, and you will have no access to Protectorate trade networks or technology-sharing programs." The Andromedan ambassador stood up, his blue skin showing the scars of Velthian torture devices. "What about them?" he asked, pointing to the group of defeated Velthian officials sitting in a separate section. "What happens to our former masters?" This was the question everyone had been waiting for. The Velthians had ruled through fear and cruelty for thousands of years. Their victims wanted revenge, and everyone expected the humans to deliver it. Instead, General Kim Sora herself stood to address the crowd. "The Velthians who committed war crimes will face trial," she said firmly. "But their entire species will not be punished for the actions of their leaders. Any Velthian world that accepts Protectorate membership and agrees to our principles will be welcomed as equals." The shock was visible on every face in the hall. Even the Velthian delegates looked stunned. "You're offering us membership?" asked former Imperial Governor Veltaran, his voice barely a whisper. "If you accept our terms," General Kim replied. "The galaxy has seen enough hatred and conquest. It's time to try something different." Captain Lee Dae-hyun found himself assigned to the strangest duty of his career. He was now the commander of Rehabilitation Station Alpha, where former Velthian military officers were being retrained for civilian life. The irony was not lost on him that many of these aliens had participated in the bombardment of Earth just months earlier. "I don't understand," said former Captain Zythek as they walked through the station's educational facilities. "Why are you helping us? We tried to destroy your world." Lee Dae-hyun paused at a window overlooking the training areas, where former enemies were learning new skills and new ways of thinking. Because that's what separates us from you, he said quietly. We don't conquer for the sake of conquest. We don't destroy for the sake of destruction. We fight when we have to, but we prefer to build. The transformation of the galaxy proceeded with remarkable speed. Former slave worlds rebuilt their civilizations with human assistance. Trade routes reopened under protectorate protection. Research facilities shared discoveries that had been hoarded by imperial scientists. But the real change was in how people thought about war itself. On a small outpost near the edge of known space, Commander Park Ji-won received a distress call from a previously unknown species. The Helix Confederation had just encountered an aggressive race called the Mordani, who were threatening to invade their homeworld. This is Commander Park of the Terran Protectorate. She responded to their plea for help. We're on our way. The Protectorate fleet that arrived in the Helix system was impressive, but not overwhelming. When the Mordani fleet detected the human ships, their commander sent a threatening message. Withdraw immediately or face destruction, the alien demanded. Commander Park's response was broadcast on all frequencies, ensuring that every ship in the system could hear it. This is the Terran Protectorate. The Helix Confederation is under our protection. You have two choices. Withdraw peacefully and we'll pretend this never happened. Or attack, and learn why the Vielthian Empire no longer exists. The Mordani fleet departed within the hour. Word of the incident spread quickly through the galaxy. The lesson was clear. The humans kept their promises, both the good ones and the terrible ones. In his comfortable cell on a rehabilitation world, former Fleet Admiral Nexthar received visits from human sociologists studying the fall of the Vielthian Empire. They wanted to understand how such a powerful civilization had collapsed so completely. You want to know our mistake? He said to Dr. Yang Hieri during one of their sessions. We thought we were fighting a primitive species. We never realized we were at war with the one race in the galaxy that had turned warfare into an art form, while never losing their capacity for mercy. He paused, looking out the window at the peaceful landscape where former enemies now worked together. You could have destroyed us completely. Any other species would have. Instead, you offered us redemption. That may be the most terrifying thing of all. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity would protect the innocent, punish the guilty, and offer second chances to those willing to change. But they would never again allow anyone to threaten their home or their friends. The age of conquest was over. The age of protection had begun.